Good evening, everybody. Are you sure you're in the right place? Welcome to Well-Read Reviews. Today we're doing Iron Age, and we're going to be talking about Razorfists, Ghost of the Badlands. So quite a significant book. Really interesting backstory there, and very fascinating creator. His first effort. We'll find out tonight how he did. So stay tuned, everyone. Let's check in with the chat. We've got Jaff, Stylor. Hey, hopefully you bring a few friends, get the party really started. We got Snuggy. Oh, he's everybody's friend. Ready to hug. He says, what's up, chat? Error tap to entry says, there's something off about the horse. No idea what you mean. My horse is impeccable. Don't you dare disparage the horse. We've got Aldous. He says, greetings and good evening to all. Greetings, Aldous. Great to see you as always. All right, with that, everybody, let's jump into the panel and jump into the book. Let's talk about this review. So let's bring it on Jim. We found this diamond in the rough. We had to dig deep. He's been buried in a lot of soot, a lot of dirt. But we found him for everybody. We brushed him off. We cleaned him up, and here to present to you, Matthew Fowler.
Oh shit! What's up, guys? I didn't see you on there.
Yeah, we're streaming live out of Colorado, everybody, just so you know. So yeah, it's all good.
Oh, don't worry, it was just random parking lot crack. It was not weed.
Yeah, I hear that stuff is going around. So you got to know the lesbian witches to get some.
Right.
All right.
Let me get into there we go.
Incognito. Someone who doesn't know any lesbian witches. Let's bring on Michael Braincroft.
If I did, I don't know. No, I don't. I don't know any lesbian witches.
You got nothing. All right.
I lead a very boring life.
Yeah.
Here in my cottage.
What's life without a few lesbian witches in it? Come on. Everybody's got to get some peace. It is. It is very peaceful. A man always at peace and has never come across a lesbian witch. Aldous.
That is a lie.
Oh, do tell. What's the backstory?
No, what?
There?
Doesn't what? Who hasn't gone to Walmart at like 3 a.m?
That is where they congregate. So
you see, just 20. That's the one thing that has not come back in my area since the end of the lockdowns is the 24-hour grocery store. They're still, they close at like 10, 11 now. And man, the people watching at 3 a.m. used to be something special.
Yeah. So now nobody goes in the pottery section at Walmart, the arts and crafts, right?
Nobody. It's
used to be Witch Central at 3 a.m. and now nothing. Oh, well.
If I run into a lesbian crackhead witch, I always make sure to come across her.
How did we get off on this topic?
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I go to bed at 10 p.m.
Yeah. I'm already canceled enough. I don't need a double, triple canceling. All right. Let's jump into Ghost of the Badlands. Let's uncancel ourselves a little bit. Redeem this stream. Razorfist book. Yeah. Too late for a lot. Razorfist book, guys. Did pretty well. Oh, why
that's
do I have
a lot of moolah? Damn, that's a lot of backers. Holy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the backer count on this, and this is something. I understand the proverbial measuring contest that occurs on crowdfunding campaigns, where it's the final number that matters. The thing I'm always interested in is two things. One, what's your per backer average? So take your total take, divide by the number of backers. That tells me how much people are spending on your campaign, which is mainly only interesting to see trend lines on future campaigns. The other thing is how many backers did you actually get? Now, you also have to make the assumption with Indiegogo and Kickstarter that that's not, that each one of those is relatively an individual. So probably take 10 to 15% off of that number, and that's how many individual orders he got. But still, significant.
Yeah. So
it's like that's like about I think the original Jawbreakers got about 10.
Yep.
So for that to happen, what is it? 8 years later?
Mm.
Well, you got a different market than that market was.
When George
Razor's
kind of
developed-
blew up, didn't he, with the political
Oh yeah,
cartoons
yeah.
and being
George is
on
mad. He's
TMZ?
like
Well,
mega famous now.
Right, and I think he might actually have more followers than Razor's does.
That was my next question. Is
overall.
like, do you think that number comes from the Razorfist side, or are they both pulling
I
their
think
weight?
majority. It's not that far off, if I recall correctly, from what the numbers he spoke about with his printed prose.
Right.
So
Now,
I think you're.
did George handle the printing on this? I don't know if you guys remember him. He had that Mary Sue
Yeah, I
book.
don't know if this was done on an Epson or not.
Right. Well, I mean, he was real gung ho about his own printing and shit when he first came on the scene, man.
Like he wanted to do print on demand. Is that what?
No. Like he had bought a printer in his apartment or something, and was like printing the first 2 issues of that. Was it called the Mary Sue?
It was Problematic was his first book. That was like circa January, February of 2019, which he was pushing right after he got quote unquote canceled off of Reddit. And then his big follow up was Mary Sue, and I think he did 2 of those, if I remember.
And that's the chick in the armor, right? Is Mary Sue?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That one he had bought a printing system and was doing all his own, printing and stuff for that.
Yeah, I don't think he printed these though.
Okay. I just didn't know.
Do not recommend.
There's just some printing stuff with this that I want to get into later, and I just didn't know if that was like, George doing it himself, or if they sent it out or whatever.
So I did the math real quick. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say.
Snuggie brought up a good point with this is the only time we're going to see a Ghost of the Badlands book, unless Razor changes his mind. Because I think about a month ago, George announced that he was going to no longer work on this project because it was not financially viable. And he instead was going to go do his new magnum opus, which is Goofberry Pie 2. And I am not making that up.
You're making that up.
I am not making that up.
Gooseberry Pie.
Sonkerberries 3.
Pie
It's like, no.
Is that a collection of his?
I can send well-read the tweets.
That's fine. So, are they co-creators then on this thing?
That's
I don't know on that. I would assume so, though, based off the fact that because if the budget was that tight, which I think had a lot to do with fulfillment, I didn't really pay much attention to it. I was very impressed with the story on this, and as we go through, we can get into some of the other issues on it. But
right, how late was it?
This is like a bande dessinée oversized hardcover, correct?
Yes. The copy I have is oversized.
This is very, very heavily inspired by European.
They're gonna rake you over the coals shipping that around the world. I mean, yeah, it's beautiful.
Let me grab like a regular comic.
That's my jam right there.
Yeah.
Nosferatu is kind of oversized too, but
yeah.
So I'd say it's almost a 1-to-1 with what Shant was doing.
Is that a T-Rex skull?
And I looked into that. I looked into printing that size.
Maybe.
And at least the printers around here, so I didn't look to get it printed internationally because that's a headache in and of itself.
Quite a bit bigger than a regular.
Yeah. Printing that size, not through a French publisher, is just like, oh my god, it is so expensive.
Really?
I know about that because that Psycho 66 fucking artist edition was taxing as fuck to get in that 11x17 size. It was just I got to get
serious volume before you can get any kind of a serious even 5,000. You're talking 10 to 20,000 before you're going to get any kind of a deal on something like that.
No,
you assume that's how the French publishers do it because they're like, we're going to print this many thousand of books with you, but it's not just one title, it's 150 titles or whatever it is. I don't know.
Yep. No, and it's because of the time that it takes on the printers for those. There's a lot of different factors involved, and I've got
shipping
talking about
shipping's heavy as hell. Like they're all very heavy.
I mean, there's an audience though for it, so it would make sense to rescale a little bit their product. Maybe make it a little bit more cost efficient.
I would be careful. Like when you say rescale, are you talking about like rescaling art to that size, or just
well, I mean
rescaling
I mean for a sequel. Like you're committed already for the first issue, right? To this format.
Right.
But definitely for a sequel, you could do something a little bit more profitable. So
I don't understand how you can make $350,000 and be like, yeah, it wasn't good enough.
And there were a lot of people that were telling Razor, like, just let George wander off into the sunset. And there's hundreds of artists that would love to work with Razor on something like this.
I'm looking at that backing number.
You mentioned Jose Garcia. This is a perfect project for Jose Garcia. Like he would absolutely kill this. And that's just one of, a number of artists that would do an excellent job on another book on this. But
you just
sadly,
mentioned that Aldous, and Jose's already finished 4 pages.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying, right? He is the closest. Like I just picture as he's drawing, like the hand of Jack Kirby guiding his, because it's just insane how many the page rate that guy can get out in a day,
and the quality. So. Yeah, well, we'll see. I guess they've got some mulling over left to do.
So he can't do more because George co-owns it then, and he'd have to give a slice to him.
Yeah, I don't know if that's.
I don't have any confirmation of that. Strong suspicions, but I have no confirmation of that. Razor just said that he was, it was tabled for now, and George said, Gooseberry Pie 2 was more important.
It's a wise decision, guys. Bold move, Cotton, is what I would say.
So you think without the pair together, they wouldn't be able to draw in anywhere near that 300,000 number?
No, I think he'd probably supersede it, because this book has gotten high praise for the story. Okay. It does something that it's been a while since I've seen a book have praise from a lot of the different segments that I'm seeing this book get praise from. Everything's, as everybody's aware, things are very fractalized and balkanized, and you will have people talk shit about a book simply because they don't like the person, regardless of the actual quality of the book. I've seen people that don't like Razor compliment this book.
Right.
I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, absolutely. Razor doesn't have a lot of enemies though either, from what I can tell, other than the right enemies. Mostly.
Oh, error tap to retry in the chat says that Razor says he owns it alone, so that sums that up right there.
Oh, well then, yeah, I'd keep doing this. Another one. All right. I don't feel like George is vital if he doesn't co-own it. You could get someone else in this manga style.
Yeah, I would say 75% of my problems with this book are the art.
Oh yeah, you don't like manga stuff. See, this book was almost Lone Wolf and Cubbish to me, man. I really
I don't have a problem with like Lone Wolf and Cub or manga art. It's just it's the choices of the layouts in numerous pages, and there's a heavy sense of repetitiveness that I don't think serves the story as well as a little bit more of a stronger or braver choice than some of the layouts would have done. When you look at just some of the camera angle choices, I think those are very well done. George is a professional. He knows what he's doing. I just think the layouts could have been done a little bit better. You've got a lot of sense of the weight of the pages isn't quite right. There's a lot of white space that where panel sizing doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They're doing a lot of stepping.
Well, that lettering leaves those big white rings around everything too.
Yeah.
The lettering was more webtoony than than what I've ever really seen in a printed book. I did notice that. I don't mind it because I know they do a lot of strange, unusual lettering in Euro books, but I wouldn't call it necessarily Euro inspired. It was just like there's a lot of space around the actual text.
Yeah, it doesn't match the time period. The font it just seems out of place.
We've done a lot of build up. Let's maybe get to the actual review. What do you guys think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, certainly.
All right, we've done. That's a lot of preamble. All right, who is the ghost? Man or myth? Flash or Phantom? Is he a ghostly stranger who wandered out of the Arizona desert to deal divine judgment upon the modern Gomorrah of Canyon Diablo? Or is he a survivor of godless effrontery? Does the whole thing read like that? It reads pretty much the way Razor speaks.
This is like this is straight out of like how you would promote a pulp story in 1933.
Yeah.
And it's right in Razor's wheelhouse, and it fits the story perfectly, because this story should be in, or it could be in, like, I don't know, Exciting Western magazine from 1934. It could be in Dime Western. This is something that Rogers Terrell would approve and put in Dime Western. It is the quintessential pulp aspect of a story that's been modernized and given a little bit of a buffer shine to like sing to modern audiences. But at its heart, this is a pulp story that is absolutely fantastic.
Would you like to give us the summary, Aldous? Can you state what this whole story is about in just a few words?
It's oh gosh, I can't remember what the righty. What's this last righty?
Righty Red. I'm the worst.
Richmond.
Raymond.
But Raymond, maybe. I got to scroll down to where the page is. Because at the end of the day, he's just righty. You only see his last name
righty
one time. And it is Redstone. So righty Redstone, whose real name is Paul. It's his story, and it starts off with what happens to him, the events that happen to him, and again, classic kind of pulp stylings is we jump into the midst of an action sequence, and then later in the book we come back and explain the lead-in to that sequence. But it's his story, and he's being manipulated. And really what it is, the best way to explain it for anybody that's probably got just a generic view of what pulp is, he becomes an agent of the shadow. Ghost is the shadow. He's recruited to help the shadow. And if you've seen the 1994 movie with Alec Baldwin, you understand what I'm saying when he's an agent of the shadow. And he does his bidding. And then throughout the book, you see other agents of the shadow that are networked secretly throughout this area and this region that are fighting against this massive corruption that's going down. And the evil that they're fighting against has no face. It has agents itself, but you don't know. The mystery is like Dr. Claw and Inspector Gadget. It's on the other side of the speaker. And so you see the agent sending the wireless message, but you don't actually see where he's sending it. And you don't get the full scope of what the darkness is. This is just about, this episode tells a complete story of the removal of one of those agents in that evil network.
Wow.
That was a really good breakdown.
Yeah, intense stuff. Thank you, Aldous. Yeah. Well, so tell us how it all begins. How does Razor draw us into this world of pulp? Does it start character focused, or does it pay attention to surrounding characters and tell the story from their viewpoint?
Like a good, Western, you've got the, someone's dying or about to die or just has died. There's been a massacre, and off in the distance on the horizon is the figure pulling the trigger, and then he ends up essentially rescuing Righty from the gang and offering him the redemption. But yeah, like Alda said, it starts right in that moment. There's a child involved as well.
And at the time, you don't know that's his gang. Like they're just murdering him. Like you don't know if he's an innocent, right? Or he's just a victim. You have no idea what his backstory.
I thought it might be the father while I was reading it.
And I think that's the intention of the presentation, is that you're expecting him to be one of the good guys. He was defending this wagon.
Yeah.
And then it's turned that no, he was a bad guy that had a moment where everything was fine up until pulling the trigger on a child.
Do you guys prefer
and like
the
a
black
quintessential Western, I do
sorry.
absolutely in this book.
Okay,
the
cool.
black and white is superior to the color.
I read the color,
and that's why they were late. Actually, was because they had and man, how many campaigns have we seen this on? If we hit X, we're going to color it, and then they missed their fulfillment date because now they have to go back, and you've got the added expenditure, the added time, plus the added printing now to do color.
I can see what you mean a little bit about the paneling. So it doesn't.
There's a lot of wasted negative space that doesn't serve a point in the story.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that. Did Alex just focus on detail here and not really scene and environment, or what were some of these choices?
George is a comic strip artist, and there's a lot of difference between a pinup artist, a comic strip artist, and then a sequential artist. And I think you're seeing that here. There's a lot of negative space that might work in a cartoon or a comic strip, but doesn't work when you're talking sequential art on the page. And you create these unnatural roadblocks for the eye line. And there's a couple of pages as well that even the eye line is very confusing as to how, as you're moving across and down the page, with what panel do you read first? And it's just a little clunky. It's not terrible by any means. I mean, if I was rating it on a scale of 10, I would still say this is well above average from what I've seen in the indie space over the last 10 years. But I'd still rate it at like a 6.5 to a 7.
Fowler, Bancroft, what do you guys think? How are you taking the art?
Go ahead. All right. So the art is manga style, right? So it almost feels like a lot of George's more sketchier stuff is too exposed when it's at this oversized band dessinée size. Like it almost needs that layer of compression from printing at a digest manga size, right? And that's really the only thing I was thinking about. His art is like, oh, this would look a lot better smaller. I don't know. That's what it was. But
I liked it. I'm not saying that those problems that Alda says don't exist, but I might not have just been really, keeping my eye out for that as I read through it this morning. But I think Matt might be onto something. It is, I don't know. I don't have the actual.
Like I'll show you an example.
So, but I can imagine what you're talking about as a thing. But look, I like it. I think it's interesting. It's different. It worked well for the story for me, and especially in terms of all the different characters that you'll find in a Western. You've got a lot of fat dudes and interesting, gruff-looking men. It worked really well for that.
Like that 2-pager could have just been like the top third of a page, like.
Yep.
It's like
I remember. Yeah,
a low amount of detail.
That's very scratchy.
For how, usually you really get in there and noodle a 2-page spread. It's supposed to be like impressive, right? Because it's 2 11 by 17 paper. This just seemed like the top third of a page panel or something. Like I wouldn't notice how sketchy it is if it was just more compressed.
And I know that, or at least it's my understanding that Razor was really wanting to, go lean in heavily to the sort of European style, the bande dessinée style. And when I think of the caliber of artists that you'll find in that scene, and there's so many incredible Westerns, that you find with that. I'm not saying, like, again, I like the art. I like what they did here. It worked for me. Could it work with someone else? Absolutely.
Well, I think if you go to the top of page 7, well read.
Yep.
This is the only, because what I was speaking about was just the actual physical page layouts. Compliments to George on a panel like panel 1. You have an exquisite Just absolutely masterful level of detail in that figure that's right there in the center of the image. And then what he does is really smart. He's got a hefty big guy immediately to the one side of him that is looking away, and then each eye line draws you to the next person, and each one fits the individual space, and the detail drops. So we build up to our primary antagonist in that panel. Boom, we've got him, and then the detail fades in the back to the point that the guy at the very back of the panel, the fourth gentleman, looks like, the Blob. Like, you can't really distinguish any facial features because it doesn't matter, because he's just another henchman. And choices like that are really good in the panels. And inside all the panels, George does an excellent job. It's the page construction that I have a problem with, because now we've done this, and now we've got the hand from individual number 4, henchman number 4 is reaching out, so it pulls your eye back around. You're going to whip down to panel 2, but you've got this little bit of dead space that would imply a pause. But why are we pausing? Why is that not extended out? Why are we wasting page? For what intentive purpose would you do that? And then you get the panel, okay, and it's good. And then we scroll down, and now there's 2 things that are important on the Ghost: his mask and the Bergman. And the Bergman is the gun that he's holding. It's a semi-automatic pistol, which only had 5 shots, which is the other thing. You've got some interesting reload times in this for how much the Ghost shoots the Bergman. But that Bergman should have just as much detail as the mask, because those are the 2 defining features of the character Ghost. Somebody that did this really, really well was Neff and Odin in Judex. They really defined the character's mask and then the gun as his 2 defining character aspects. It's done with the shadow in, like, if you go back and look at like Kaluta's shadow run from the 70s with DC, the 45s and the scarf are what you always get. The slouch hat might go in and out of detail, but those aspects of the character always hold. And I think that was a little bit of a miss on George's part. I would have made that gun not ornate. You want to keep it mechanical. You want that thing to be as Spartan as possible, because it's just utilitarian. It's just a weapon. It's once it goes into his hand, it becomes the extractor of justice. So Ghost still remains the executioner, but the implement needs to have more detail.
I think Razor actually has that gun.
Yes, physically. He does.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
And then I guess
Bergmans are pretty cool.
I kind of wanted more details about the gun. It was kind of vague, like, I don't know, that first guy he sends him to in the story that's a bartender. I would have almost like preferred that the guy tried to kill himself and then the gun didn't fire, and then he reads the note and the note's like, yo, go get this gun repaired in this town, and then the guy's like a gunsmith, and then he goes on a big detail about that gun he's working on. It's this, and we get like to learn about the gun. You know what I'm saying? Because he's just kind of mentions that, oh, he has a machine on the battlefield. It's not very detailed, like, and because it looks like Lone Wolf and Cub, I kind of want long ornate weapons explanations like Lone Wolf and Cub had, a little
right.
bit. And there wasn't really
And I think that's just because of George's art. I don't think that's the intent at all with this. I think it's at its heart, this is a pulp story, and the gun is only important. The only reason I'm asking for that detail is because George is giving me detail in other panels. Throughout this, there are moments of just exquisite detail, and others where it's kind of washed away. And I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Filikov's tumor for that exact reason, in that he understands when you can drew the scritchy scratch, rough Guy Davis, like attack the page and etch the ink into the paper, versus a more flowing, free-formed, detailed image. I'm cool with that delineation. I just don't see it where I would anticipate it, and I see it where I wouldn't anticipate it, which also could be what George was going for. But either way, I again, and right here, this page, page 9, the bottom of page 9, why do we have dead space on the backs of those 2 panels, on the bottom source of those 2 panels, and then we've got this long shot of the horse? Why? I just don't. I would love to have an explanation if there's a reason for that, or if it's just, again, it feels like a cartoonist trying to structure a page like a cartoonist would structure a strip.
So this opening seems pretty intense. It's all basically action based. And I mean, does it keep that pace throughout, or is there character development that happens? Bancroft, let's ask you about Star.
No. It's a proper story. There's, it has its beats. We get into, like Aldous said, it's the story of Righty, kind of his redemption, and so we follow him. It's sort of led by the ghost as he goes around, and there's something happening out here in this. It's a kind of a canyon. I'm terrible with names. I was going to say, this is one of those stories where I'm going to want to read this 3 times because there's
Canyon Diablo, which was a town, and there's the implication that there's a great deal of upper level corruption going on.
Yeah,
because they burned the town, and then you've got the remains of those people that kind of stayed and hobbled together a life from the remnants of what was still there. And now you have forces within that town that are, doing machinations to make sure that everything, continues on plan, because the town was burned for a reason. And so you've got this beautiful thread that's being very loosely woven in the background through secondary dialogue of your primary plot, right? It's your A plot. Your B plot is Redstone and Righty Redstone, what he's dealing with. And the fact that he's called Righty, and it's a great play because he loses his right arm in the initial gunfight in the beginning when he's shot down by his own gang. But he uses it, and then they play with that. There's actually an exchange with the bartender where they make a reference of that pun. And it was just a really nice touch, because it's the kind of thing you like to see, where he's not afraid to poke fun at himself for why he's doing things. And it's a little moment of levity that adds just a nice little embrace between those two characters, both of whom are agents of Ghost. And it was just a nice moment. Good character moment. Excuse me.
Yeah, so you're led around what you would expect in a good Western. There's the town, there's the saloon, there's the old, there's a homestead. They're out in
There's an evil Indian.
There's an evil Indian. Is there a ceremony? There is. They go into an Apache death cave.
The Apache death cave, yes. Yeah. And there's a great. It has everything you want. Like you said, you've got. Not only do you have the ceremony, but you also have the mythology that, now we're going to tell you what happened before. And there's a myth to this place. And it adds just another layer of the mythology upon the mystery. And it's well paced. I didn't have any problems. I really liked the story. This was an A+. This is a great Western because it hits all the tones, like Mike just said. But most importantly, it's individualist focused. And that's what you want on a Western. A Western is all about freedom and liberty and all the quintessential qualities that make America America. And you can play with that in multiple ways. You can play with it like they play with it in Shane, where Shane represents the Old West versus the New West, and Shane's of a dying breed. Or you can do it like they did here, and Razor understands the Western because he focused it on Righty, and it's focused on Redstone, and it's his redemption arc.
Yeah, we can't.
And it's all laid out in the beginning.
We can't ignore a very important aspect of that, which is the Christian aspect of it as well, which is a big driving force behind the Ghost, and also that's part of Righty's redemption as well. And that's woven throughout the whole thing as well, which is unusual.
His name's Paul.
His name's
Paul, isn't it?
What's that?
That's his name, Paul, isn't it?
Paul. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, like didn't Paul change his life and get reborn or whatever?
Yes, and also Paul changed his name, right?
On the road to Damascus or something? Yeah.
On the road to Damascus, and where does he changes his name in front of the death cave? So, yeah, it's the metaphors are there, and it really works with how the story's not... there's maybe arguably one point that gets a little slow when they capture the woman at the telegraph station. I think that was a little clunky, maybe. I think that'd be the only
actually
point.
Yeah, that's the one part I got a bit lost, and I thought I'm gonna have to read this again. And I think it's just down to I'm not quite sure if I know exactly who all these characters are, because remember, there's people in the town or people in the place or wherever that are corrupt, but then there's the people who are with the ghost. And I think I got a bit lost as to who's who. And I just thought, oh, I'm going to have to go back and reread this book just to sort of see it again. I did the same thing with, rewatching Game of Thrones and stuff. I must just get easily lost on some things. But yeah, that moment, I was like, oh, okay. I was noticing, that I was kind of, who's this? What's happening here? Whereas the whole rest of the book, it was a breeze.
You were mentioning the lettering a little bit earlier, Michael. Did you want to talk about that?
Well, it just that it reminded me of webcomics. This is, what I remember because, from Webtoon. And I think that's more inspired by manga, I'm pretty sure. And the reason it looks that way is because Japanese or Korean writing takes up a lot more space than English, and they would just translate it, and
it's vertical in columns.
You just put the English in there, so there'd be a lot of space. And I think that's where that stems from. So I didn't like it. It's always a little bit. It's like, okay, that style is developed from that, but people adopt it and continue it because that's what people know. So there's a lot of different influences flowing into this. In a normal French book, you might get 11, 12 panels a page sometimes, on these big bande dessinées. Whereas on this book, it's very much more in line with modern comics, where sometimes you get like 2 or 3 panels on a page. I mean, a lot of times you get 5, 6, but so there's a lot of different influences coming into this.
No, for sure. I think like a good example is if anybody wants to go out and look at like Long John Silver by Matthew Lafray. That's a really good example of what Mike's talking about, where you'll have 2 or 3 pages that are very free flowing, and then a very, very dense series of pages that are heavily focused on dialogue. And you might have 10 panels on that page with heavy dialogue, and then you're going to go back to a free flowing concept. It's a very like you're just kind of loosely rocking through a book, and then you're going to hit a couple pages where you really got to chew, and then you're going to move on. And I think it really works with creators that understand that you have to balance that free flow versus that chewing moment. There's none of that here. It's a very free flow story throughout all of it. I really appreciated that because, man, one of the things writers do in indie comics terribly they overwrite. And this book does not have that problem at all.
Not at all.
Well, how's he able to? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, if I just wanted to touch on the writing, I've never read anything by Razor before, but in my opinion, he nailed it. The prose, the choice of words, the dialogue, the way it flows, I was really enjoying that. I like the sort of period way that a lot of them speak. I like all the biblical references and quotes from Ghost and how that intertwined with the story and everything. And like Alda said, I like that the amount of text on the page kept it going pretty quickly, because it's 100 and something page book. So,
right.
I appreciate.
Well, and there's going back to what you said about the word choice, the phrasing of how he chooses to do things. Lines on page 32. There's a line from one of the heavies in it. Both literally and figuratively, the heavy. He says, "Not every stray requires a leash," and that's a great line. And there's a bunch of other little ones that are done throughout there. The construction of the phrasing is very, very well done. It's a good grasp of continuing the references, because as we find out later, not every stray requires a leash. Well, this guy's actually a puppet of somebody else. So you've got the marionette is making a pun about his own situation, about somebody else. It's really nice double entendre done throughout this. Same thing where he's talking to the bartender later in the next page with, "Are you the proprietor?" "No, I just like to wear aprons." It seems rough and cordial, but it's a good entry into where that dialogue goes. And they start off a little hostile, and then they meet in the middle and end up finding out they both work for the same guy. They're both agents of the shadow, in that sense. So it's just a really nice pacing. I really like some of the wordplay. It was just very well done. But again, here at the bottom of this page 33, again, we see that dead space. Like, man, it just really bugs me the more I look at this, how much dead space and pauses we've got. The implied pause of the neutral space that isn't needed. And I think this would flow a lot better. I think you could even cut it down a little bit, and make this flow a little bit better.
Well, with the writing so sparse, how is he able to weave so many different themes into the story? Is it done visually primarily, or is it just he utilizes the pages that he has to make all the references? You said it's biblical. You said there's the Western theme. It sounds like this book has a lot, honestly, going on.
I think it's just a well-crafted story. I think it's just, like any genre sort of story, there's a lot to lean on. Like, for instance, the fact that the Ghost of the Badlands is some kind of righteous protector, or however you want to describe it. We don't need to understand anything more than that. We know, we get it. So you just jump right in. The guy, Paul, or Righty, he had a moment of conscience, and now he's set on a path of redemption. So a lot of it, and it's in the Wild West. We know these places. We know what it's like there. So really, you can just set off running. You don't have to really set up anything more. And I think if what's happened here is they've just crafted a tight story, and and off it went.
Well, he does things like, if you go to page 37, if you go to the bottom of page 37, this is a very, very simple, in 2 lines, he's able to do a little bit of world building. And if you go to the bottom of that right here, this is another good example of what Mike was talking about. We have 2/3 of the page is handled on this beautiful, really well done. Compliments to George on this page. Gorgeous page. Looks like it could be an etching in a pulp magazine. And all we're doing is quoting from Proverbs, but it's paced appropriately, that it's just enough. You get the full arc, and then you go down on the page, and then you get this exchange, and all the world building happens in the last panel. That's all been built up to this, right? So if you read that Proverbs quote and then you listen to what the bartender says, there's a connection, and he's tying 2 things loosely together, but he's planting the seed. And that the seed is that the advice is well intended. Those are the crows, Will Blackfeather's crew. So Will Blackfeather obviously is the Native American. His gang is called the Crows because he's the Blackfeather, and the guys that follow him are the Crows. It's just a nice little subtle world building thing that's then not used again, because you don't need to use it again. You've already defined what it is. You don't need to dwell on it. You don't need to reference it again. Assume your reader's intelligent and they can draw the inference.
Uh-oh.
And we lost Well Read.
He left us. He was like, I wanted more blood. Typical
Mike, yeah, you mentioned the biblical allegory. Did you, where do you think he became? Was he always Paul? Because he goes by Righty, and there's like I mentioned, the great moment where he mentions the good, at least you can joke about your disability. But then at the end, when he finally reveals himself to the bad guys, he goes, "My name is Paul." Did you take that as a religious inference upon first reading, or was that just like an action movie moment?
No, I think there's, the whole time I'm expecting, this kind of, I didn't, I don't want to give away spoilers, but I expect this is going to take a heavy toll, and he's going to, finally leave that life of Righty behind him, and, make sense that that's that he would shed the nickname as well. And was that his old gang, or I don't know that.
No, his old gang, I assume, was killed at the beginning.
Was all killed. Okay, yeah, because I don't know how much they're all involved with each other.
By the ghost. The ghost killed his old gang right before they killed him.
Yeah, but I don't know how sort of big it is. And like I said, I really feel like I've got to read it again because I feel like I'm missing details that are probably key. But I do think it was a sort of a religious awakening. That he didn't, other than he picked up the cross and decided that he would walk the righteous path, so to speak.
I mean, yeah, he kind of, you're being like steered by this guy from the shadows. It's like kind of like, I got my eye on you though if you sin, or whatever. So I don't know. Is he choosing really, or is he just kind of doing it because? Well, I don't know. I guess
the other option was put a bullet in your head. Yeah.
Well, I think that's an extension of the beginning, right? Because he's ordered by his gang, as we find out in the midpoint, that he's told to make this choice where, hey, kill the girl, kill this child, so that we can, reap the rewards of, raiding this wagon, which is a little weird. It's just a single wagon, but he chooses not to, and then his gang shoots him down. Ghost shows up, he kills all the gang, and then the rest of the book is essentially him trying to, find whatever glimmer it was in his soul for that one moment where he hesitated. And then at the end, of course, you get the opposite. It's the Die Hard moment, right? Where, Reginald, I killed a kid, John McClane. I can't shoot my gun. And then at the end, he shoots the gun, and we do the same thing here, right? It's that classic trope of I hesitated before, but now I'm not going to hesitate, and he shoots the bad guy. And if we could, Red, that page is pretty impressive when they're in the death cave with what George is able to do with that bullet impact in Blackfeather's forehead. That is fantastic.
What's the number?
With the actual ripples of the flesh as the bullet impacts is it's a fantastic page with great detail with the eyes bulging.
That sort of stuff is
91
can really, that's the sort of stuff I would expect to find in a more manga style. Is really over the top cartooning, essentially.
What's the page number?
Here, I got it.
91.
Do you guys think? Do you guys think that Paul was a real bad guy who just had a moment, or do you think he was just a kind of a okay-ish guy who he just was running around with bad dudes?
No, the religious metaphor is so heavy that he is a representation of Saul, right? This is his road to Damascus. Only instead of Christ, Ghost comes to him and saves his life. In this case, it's literal. In the case of Saul's story, it's figuratively. He saves his eternal soul, and he changes and becomes a believer. And then you've got moments of doubt, right? And the nice part about that is this is like Acts, right? It's the retelling of that story. And at the end, he's finally self-identifying that, no, I am Paul. But he was always Paul. He just went by righty before then.
Yeah. And hold on a sec. I had a thought there. I'll get back to it, guys. Go on.
Fowler, you've been quiet. Give us some of your thoughts.
I don't know, man. I just like listen to all this talk about Pulp, man. Really.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. You might know because I don't. Why a patriarchal cross? Why the double cross? Is that significant?
That I don't know. I have no idea on that, other than it's just another layer of esoterica that you can build upon. If you just do a standard cross, it doesn't give you anywhere to go, right?
Was the double cross is the Rosicrucian cross, or what is that?
No, it's similar to it.
What is it?
I Googled it a while ago when I was doing my trivia.
Right.
It does have a special meaning. I can't remember exactly, but I thought maybe one of you guys might know in particular. But I think you're right, Aldous. It really is it really does make you stop and look at it and pause and think. And these guys are walking around carrying it like a a symbol.
That's the only it's the only thing that bugs me about this. If you're in a small and it's called the patriarchal cross, but if you don't see patriarchal crosses, unless you're if you're in Eastern Europe, you're going to see them because they're heavily associated with the Greek Orthodox Church. But if you see them, it kind of stands out. And so it's a little odd that nobody's huh. So there's 12 guys walking around town with that patriarchal cross thing, whereas all the other Christians are just walking around with normal crosses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that again, you got to suspend disbelief. There you go.
The Cross of Lorraine was also used by missionaries to the Native Americans. It also has some European connections. So there you go. It's a certain Cross of Lorraine.
I feel like it's something that they probably would get into if they were to continue the story, even if it's just a one line about something. I don't know if it's a hugely important thing. It was just it's something that I noticed because the gun is so unique. The mask is an unusual thing. The cross, you would imagine it is as well.
Well, is the whole book then an allegory for Christ? Is that why you're saying that the ghost was a savior figure in a lot of this? Or does it only borrow bits and pieces? I'm trying to figure out if it's weighing heavily into a particular theme. In a particular,
I'd say it feels a bit more. I don't know. To me, it feels a bit more Old Testament justice. This is, this is a bad place, and now a servant of the Lord is coming in to clean it up, and he's recruiting soldiers for his holy army.
Right.
He's not Christ-like, and he's inspiring fear and dread in just his very name. He's got a lot of them.
Fowler, did you get a lot of Catholic guilt reading this?
No, dude, I got a lot of anime joy when I read this. You know what I'm saying? The elements that Aldous doesn't even like about it is all the shit that spoke to me about this, man. the facial expressions before someone's head explodes,
Well, dude, I cannot. This art isn't my style. I can
no, but it's totally mine. It's right up my alley, bro. I love the look of it.
The page that Well Read has up right now is absolutely brilliant. And you talk about story and how to tell a story in images and still images, which is sequential art. Here, this is a great example. George is killing it. He opens the door. There's nothing inside. You get the grin of a man that's about, it's the fox in the hen house. Ha ha! And then his expression immediately changes. And you don't need any dialogue. You don't need any narration. Everything's told in those 3 panels. And then everything changes for the group that's raiding the coach after that. But again, look at that dead space. Why is there dead space at the bottom of that panel? You should immediately flow into the next page with no pause.
Do you think there was originally supposed to be caption box there or something, that got removed? Or
no, I think it's a cartoonist that doesn't understand sequential art.
Is it just asymmetrical to be artsy but fail? I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
It's asymmetrical just because that's
Well, and I asked Mike this because there were 2 pages in the second Lucent book that I took issue with, and when I had the chance on the last Well Read review to ask Mike about it, he's like, "Well, I didn't even think about it. I just thought it looked cool." And I think that may be the case here. He's not thinking about it. And that's fine. But I look at things. I'm not an artist. I'm a comic book reader. I look at things different, and I'm just going. It doesn't make sense to me and maybe I'm too Western in my reading. Maybe I don't understand what they're trying to do with the manga side of things.
So Fowler, break down the manga inspirations that really spoke to you in this book.
I got a whole lot of Lone Wolf and Cub energy off of it. A little bit of Fist of the North Star at times. When it comes into the facial expressions of the henchmen and the more, two shaped characters and stuff, you know, the lumpy guy with the scar across his face and stuff, is all like really hits those Miyazaki, you know, Spirited Away kind of My Neighbor Totoro facial expression areas. What is that guy's name? Whatever, the guy who made Astro Boy, Tetsuma or whatever. Those older kind of cartoony expression, but then in this gritty, like Lone Wolf and Cub, and by Lone Wolf and Cub I mean like there's nothing sensational that happens in this story. There's no guy that can shoot.
It's very grounded
around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very based in the physical real world. There's nobody can jump higher than anyone else, or even the mysterious figure doesn't do, you know, the Batman disappearing act stuff. There's like nothing supernatural in this, so it's very much like Lone Wolf and Cub, which is aside from when all the blood spurts everywhere during the slashing scenes, is very, you know, grounded in reality with its proportions and the weight of things, you know.
The only thing that is slightly heading towards that direction is the Ghost is a character like a samurai that you can't beat. He's just so good, you know, or a bit like that, which doesn't really exist in real life, but it exists in stories, and we love these characters. You know, he always hits his mark pretty much. You know, he can take down a whole gang of people, and they really don't stand a chance. So there is that element to it, which I love. Everyone, you know,
Tetsuka, he worked on Go-Go 13 too. I don't know if you guys remember Go-Go 13.
Yep.
But I got a lot
fantastic series
of that vibe to the look of it too. At some point, it's like this happy medium of all these really classic, you know, techniques. Kind of, George is definitely doing manga stuff here, you know.
No, and Golga 13 is it's often imitated and never exceeded. That's a fantastic thing. But you mentioned Batman, and there's well, Red, you've got this page up, so let's talk about it. Something that's done in Batman and has changed with Batman is you used to see Batman's eyes in the mask, and then we moved away from seeing Batman's eyes. And Batman, when he's got the cowl on, it's the full whites. Here we don't have that. When you see Ghost, you see his eyes, and what that does is it humanizes the character. Even though he's wearing an expressionless mask, you still know it's a man behind that. And so, yes, there's mystical qualities, but he's still human. There's still something tangible. And I think that even plays further into the metaphor that they're using, that this is a Christ-like figure.
Definitely otherworldly. Definitely, yeah, that mystique, the blank face. I really like that. And it reminded me of the that king, you know, the one that fought Salamane. You know me, I'm terrible with names. I can't. You know that movie where the
Leper King?
The one where the stuff happens?
King Baldwin of Jerusalem?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, I was like, I do love that look. You know, he's just got this blank face, and all you can see is his eyes. I really appreciated that they were doing something similar in this.
Isn't that Ridley Scott's Kingdom Come, the Leper King? They did that too.
Must be, yeah. I don't think I ever saw the movie, but I've seen, you know, clips of it and stuff.
Oh, Gladiator has the faceless dude like that, or the expressionless face dude like that too.
With the lion mask?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to the Spring-Heeled Jack, the Scarlet Pumpernickel, the Zorro, the mask, Phantom of the Opera. Matt and I were talking about what the symbolism of the mask.
Oh yeah, because I asked, Phantom of the Opera, V for Vendetta, the Masquerade, Anarchy from Batman.
Yep, it's all playing with the same concept of it's in the expressionless man, or you're trying to hide something, not identity. It's not about hiding identity. It's about hiding expression. It's emotionless.
It's a dense work. I'm wondering how long it took him to actually craft this. Has this been a project that he's been working on for a long time? I'd be curious to find out, because it seems like it has a lot of references. Unless he's just been like pent up and dying to tell this story. Didn't he study comic art, Razorfist? What's his educational background? I thought he had a media degree or something like that.
No idea.
No.
He played minor league baseball. I know that. But
yeah, I thought he had a background in comics.
What he does have is a deep understanding of American pulp, and he's obviously a reader, because no one writes like this unless you're a reader. And it's very well done. It shows he understands pacing. It shows he understands storytelling. It's a very, very well written comic. I have issues with art and I have issues with layout, but even then, I still recommend this. This is a great buy for the price for what it does, and it is a goddamn shame that we're not going to get more than likely not going to get more.
Yeah, not very many crowdfunded books are to this level, and yeah, it is a bit of a real shame if they don't continue the story, because I think he's got something here with the ghost. Because you can just do, you could do 100 of these stories
and
never explain and never give an answer, because you don't need to give an answer.
No,
and that's why the Shadow works. That's why Doc Savage works. That's why all the Westerns work that are from that pulp era. That's why the Phantom works. That's why Batman works. That's why Batman still works. And Batman doesn't work the minute you start humanizing it, because you need it to be mysterious. You don't want all the answers. You think you want all the answers, but the minute you're given all the answers, it becomes disinteresting. You don't want Batman to get married, because the minute Batman gets married, you're humanizing somebody you don't want to humanize. Denny O'Neil understood that. That's why it was the greatest run of Batman. Here, you can do the same thing. There's infinite number of stories with infinite number of agents. You don't even have to continue with Paul or Righty Redstone.
Yeah.
He can move on to the next town, up the road, and keep on working up the chain. And then in three issues later, just like in The Shadow, Harry Vincent shows back up. Only instead of Harry Vincent, it's Righty Redstone, Paul, who's now a legitimate guy who's raising the daughter of the wagon train in the beginning with the woman that is caring for her because they got married, and now they're making, Diablo Canyon a legitimate town. But, even though he's paid his penance, the ghost comes calling. And in issue 4, he has to go help the ghost again. And you've already got the backstory, so it all works. It opens up that whole door, and that's why this is so brilliant.
I had those 3 pegged as being a family too. Like in my head canon, like those 3 ended up together too.
Yeah, because that's just how tropes work, right?
Like, and then when they didn't, I was kind of like let down by that. It's like, never mind. But yeah, it's like they seem like they should have just been like, the makeshift family after all that tragedy or whatever at the end.
Well, and it's implied like by her name that she's disabled a little bit too. So you just make the assumption that like she's got a club foot or something, and that she's going to get together with the guy that lost his arm, and they're going to raise the daughter. It just fits because it works. He doesn't imply it. He doesn't imply it at all. But that's what I'm talking about. This thing is so tight that you're filling in the blanks, and we're both filling in the same blanks because that's how it's guiding you to do it.
Yeah.
And that's good storytelling. And man,
part of me is like, oh, did they intentionally
in indie books, man?
Like not do those 3 together because that would be cliche or corny. Like that's what the reader would want. So expectations subverted. Like because it did feel like it was directed.
You don't do it in this issue, but you do it in a callback.
Right.
You always come back to this because because he's been redeemed. Now he's done a good deed, so he gets to get a payoff. So he's not going to be in a worse place the next time you visit him. He's going to be in a better place because he did a good thing.
So it's a story of retribution, essentially, at the end. There's a salvation arc here. What kind of resolution does the book have?
You don't know. You just know that Paul identifies himself as Paul, and that in and of itself is his redemptive act. And then you get the ending, which is Ghost taking out the puppet of the puppet for this town.
So there's a justice aspect to it.
Oh, there's no justice aspect too, because you don't really think of like that fat guy as having done anything really crazy. When the ghost kills him, it's like it's not that big a deal because he's not really portrayed as a horrible person. Like throughout the whole book, like he's not doing any crazy shit or has any weird quirks about him, or you know what I'm saying? Like they don't evil him up enough to make his death like really hit, you know?
But I don't think you need to. I think the thing that works here is he's middle management. And all he says is like, well, you don't understand. We had to burn the town because we had to get the deed. We had to get the land.
Yeah.
You know, don't you understand? This is for improvement. You know, some people have to sacrifice so that the rest can win. Like, and that's classic Western.
Well, and once I'm gone, they'll just replace me with someone else who will do it. Like,
right. So it's all he's doing is it tells a complete story, but this is not a final boss. This isn't even a level boss.
This isn't.
You're beating like a mid-stage guy.
Right.
And that's again the killer here is there is an entire another story with the other person. He sends that wireless transmission. Who did he send it to? That's the guy that you want dead. This guy's just a flunky that's doing it for the money.
Well, and the fat guy wasn't the guy who burned his village, that the guy who you think might be the ghost when he was a burn victim or whatever. That had nothing to do with that fat guy.
Right, and we haven't even talked about that. You've got this great section in the middle where we give this mythology behind what happened in the town, and we're implying that maybe that's Ghost's backstory. We don't know, but it gives an answer to who the ghost is in your head, and now you'd think that it's this one guy that's redeemed, which is very V for Vendetta.
Yeah, right? As I say, Dark Man, V for Vendetta, like it's right.
Right. It's the guy that's seeking redemption against the people that took everything from him. But the best way to play that in later issues is every third or fourth issue, wherever they're at, you give another mythology that people have built up over where this guy came from.
Right.
And it's all unique. So every town's got their own metaphor. Every town's got their own mythology. Every town has their own, like, he's our savior because that's humanity, right? We're all going to come up with a reason for why our savior's here. When one does,
like Maverick, he's going from town to town, but instead of playing poker, he's delivering a reckoning.
Well, he's Paladin, right? I mean, Paladin shows up, have gun will travel. He shows up where he's needed. Only unlike Paladin's always requested. The ghost shows up before anybody even knows he's needed.
That's Lone Wolf and Cub. Have sword, will travel, man.
Well, and that's Lone Wolf and Cub is a retelling of Have Gun Will Travel with Paladin. But yeah, they just added in the child, and it works so well. And that's the great thing about storytelling is take something that works and change it just a little bit and make it your own. And Matt, you've done that in your stuff. Mike, you've done that in your stuff. That's why I'm honored being on a panel with both of you. You guys are great storytellers.
Thank you, man.
I haven't told any stories. So
that's why I didn't mention you well read.
What am I doing here?
You're well read,
just
not well told.
Weird music at the start.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. I need to get everybody's attention. I have to do something. So does it give any kind of clue on the character's motivations, or is that really not important in a story like this?
I mean, my headcanon is that it's a preacher from that town that got burnt in his church.
Yeah, you want it to be like Hang 'em High, right?
Or whatever, right? Well, I mean, that's I don't know. If it's so grounded in reality, then Occam's razor and all. Like, clearly he's a preacher who got his church burned and now he's out for revenge. Like, that's the most logical. But yeah, like you said, you could have a different origin story in every town. But
like Aldous says, yeah, that would be a fun thing. And you know, each town adapts the origin story to some tragedy that happened in that town. And him just being a ghost, you know, to me is much more intriguing and would fit with the mask and the way he operates in the world. And I agree that, yeah, it's, to me, I much prefer the mystery and just having the character be who he is. I don't need to know the extensive backstory. Because it is all about the people in the town and what's happening there. He is an instrument of, you know, reckoning, Old Testament justice, and you know, yeah. I used to love watching these episodic Western old black and white TV shows, and yeah, I really enjoyed this. book. And I hope that they can figure out a way to make more.
All right. I guess with that, we can do final thoughts, because that sounds like a good closer to me. Fowler, what's your final thoughts on the book?
I wanted to give it an 8, but the numbers ended up giving it a 7.4. My averages, by writing, art, graphic design, fulfillment, all those different categories, and printing. And the printing was a little weird. There was some like white vertical lines in it, like within the black and white version I had, almost like when you do the zipatone and size it wrong, it creates a moire patterns or whatever.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
God, thank you for saying that.
All right. So it's almost like I wasn't sure if it was originally like using these manga zips and then when got resized to French bande dessinée size, maybe fucked up the moire pattern or created these vertical white lines. But I mean, that sounds so nitpicky and shitty. You know what I'm saying? Because this was like a good experience. I don't want to really get into the numbers with it like that, man. This is a solid 8. I feel like I would have given it a 9, or had it been something great, had it been at a smaller size and helped pad some of George's sketchier stuff, and had maybe some of the characters been a little bit more quirky, weird traits or actions that kind of made them stand out and be memorable and shock me as a reader, a little bit. They were just all kind of plain a little bit, even though they're nobody Tarantino'd. Nobody did any weird shit. Like oh
my God! Don't see. I was with you until you.
No, I'm saying that to piss you off.
No, I'm not. No, you're good, man. I get it. I understand your meaning, because
he wants to be more like Hateful Eight.
Like I was talking to Phil. I was talking to Phil about this, and I was like the Indian dude. Like I would rather he maybe has like a necklace of white girl fingers, or something. There was just no weird over the top like thing that made the evil, which then would make the heroes.
But I think that's the best part of it, though, Matt.
Yeah,
I disagree with
gray
you.
For me.
No, man, you don't. No, this is where I think this is where a lot of authors go and lose readers. Is you make the evil too evil. You make the evil mundane, because that's the evil that we see every day. The evilest person in your town isn't it isn't the old banker. Like, to go back to like It's a Wonderful Life. The evilest person isn't him, man. The evilest person is the council member that's handling the zoning, that's allowing him to be the evilest person in town, that's abusing their right of office to allow that the slums are the only houses that are being built. That's the evil motherfucker. And that's what this book does well, is that evil is mundane. It's the corrupt motherfuckers in our area that are the worst. Where you build up to is that there is one guy that is even more mundane, that is even at a higher level of elected office, that's abusing his privilege, because that's so much more subversive of an evil. That, it's the thing, man. The fact that there's the same mayor in Jaws 1 and Jaws 2 is both the most American and the most evil thing ever.
Right. I'm thinking I was more like, Gary Oldman in The Professional, like cracking fucking pills and singing classical music, just that weird villain shit, that kind of gives you something to remember a little bit more.
And I think that's in your final arc, right? Like your end boss ends up being like a railroad baron that's like that, right? He's whoring around and drinking, and he's the definition of excess. While everyone around him is in abject poverty. I think that's where you play with that, but you have to build to that. You have to show the levels of mundane evil that grow up to that before you can do that. I think doing that right off the bat, that's very, very.
You get stuck with style over substance then when you do the cool shit.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, but man, you really sometimes just want to get to that cool shit. I don't know.
I know, but just tell a good story. And this is what this book does: is it tells just a good story. It's a great one shot.
Like I would have liked the ghost in his lair doing some weird shit, like hitting himself with a belt, or that kind of crazy weird shit. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't.
Dude, you never seen the Da Vinci Code?
What? Again,
that's like that religious shit, right? That
ball in his mouth, and
no, or just something that's like something, like something for as a reader that's like I don't know. There just was no like
lesbian witches.
All right, for as manga as it looked, there was a distinct lack of what the fuckery, that comes with that art style. Like even if you watch read Lone Wolf and Cub,
and that's the pulp side
weird
of it,
shit,
right? Because you don't. You read
like it was tame almost. It was not. I don't know. It didn't
that's
have
the pulp.
that.
What you don't like is everything I love about it, because that's the pulp influence.
But the manga look led me there. Like my eyes are used to, like I'm used to when I see that style, crazy shit popping off, right? Like I'm conditioned to from reading all those mangas, like Crying Freeman, shit like that, where it's like, I don't know. I think the visual made me expect a little more of that weirdness, strangeness or whatever. Originality. There was nothing in this book that I don't feel like I hadn't seen somewhere else before. There was nothing uniquely like crazy about just this. Masked guy with a hat. Seen that a million times. Railroads and getting kicked into a pit. Seen it a million. You know what I'm saying? Even the coolest part, his gun, it's vague. Like I would have liked like great detail about that and why it's so awesome.
Well, he's even Razor's even behind the curve on that, because the guys that did all the prop design for Mandalorian used the Bergman for Mandalorian's gun. So it's not even like something that's unique in
the brings us back to Lone Wolf and Cub. Mandalorian is totally Lone Wolf and Cub.
Exactly. And so I mean but there's only I am on the most superficial level, I am a Joseph Campbell believer. There is only one story. I'm a believer in the monomyth at the most universally basic concept. Take that monomyth and make it your own. And that's where things get unique. Is this a unique, grand story that's never been told before? No, it's not. But you know what it is? It's a good goddamn story. And it's worth reading and it's worth owning. And there's very few books in the indie scene that I will say that about, because this does have multi-read. You could read this multiple times and get something different out of it each time and catch something different. It's very nuanced. And there's a lot of metaphor in it. And I think you're going to put what you get out of it is exactly how much you put into it. And man, that's a good book.
Yeah, it's satisfying as a fast casual read, but if you want to dive deeper into it, like Googling the crosses and stuff like that, there's substance there to dig into.
For sure. So I mean, I'm right there with you. I would rate this as an 8 out of 10, which is huge praise. I never give a 10 out of 10. Perfect doesn't exist.
Right, and 9 is for like the great stuff we grew up with that we love. That's the 9 stuff,
right? Because nostalgia, man, we are simpatico, brother. 9 is nostalgia, because nostalgia will always win out over anything new, because the patina of age will always put a glow on something that you can never match. So an 8 to an 8.5 is the greatest number I can give a book. This is a fantastic success. A+. My hat's off to Razor. I don't even like George. George had me blocked up until like 6 months ago. But my hat's off to George, because man, he sold me on the art. I did not back this when it was on Indiegogo because George had me blocked, and I just have a general rule: you block me as an artist, I'm not going to buy your shit.
Right.
But I did back it as soon as George unblocked me. A mutual of ours said, like, "Hey man, would all this kind of wants to buy your book, could you just unblock him?" He unblocked me, and I bought the book off of Amazon, and I'm very, very happy with it. It's a very successful. I recommend anybody buys it. I've said, I think 2 or 3 times on Twitter, this is the best Western graphic novel I've read in years. It is fantastic, highly, highly praised. It's a goddamn shame they're not doing more. But in a roundabout way, I almost don't want them to do more, because they did such a good job on this. I feel like they'd fuck it up on the second one. So,
well, the Righty's tale is self-contained, and it's not like finalized in the ending, so it leaves you with that like ambiguous, like ending.
Right, and I think sometimes you don't need a sequel, man.
Yeah. I mean, it works if this is all we get. It works on its own if this is all it's ever going to be.
And this is going to sound terrible because I've said multiple times that I want them to do more, and I do want them to do more. But if they never do more, it almost works better because we are in such a sequel, second issue, another trilogy dominated. Like, we're just going to drive every franchise that's good into the ground.
You know, like the Ghost verse, the Badlands verse.
Yeah, I don't need. I kind of. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I kind of like this. That it just exists and it's good. And then we move on. And I kind of like that. And I'm okay with that.
What about you, Bancroft?
I want more. I feel like it was structured like the TV shows I used to watch in black and white, in that it just sort of screams that there's this specter out there, you know, of evil. And the job isn't done yet, and he's chopped off one tentacle, but there's plenty more where that came from. And I also want more because I like having really good stuff to read from crowdfunded comics, because like Alda said, it can be few and far between. And I like
you guys both need to write and publish more.
trying. And yeah, it seems like it just seems a shame not to do it just because the artist can't make it work financially. There's 1,000 artists out there who I think would be dying to work on Ghost of the Badlands sequel, and that I'm sure would feel it's more than financially worth it. So I do hope they continue on with it. I'm
Who's
like
that
you
kid
guys
that worked for Odin that did that like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in Ancient Rome.
Oh, that's a chick, isn't it?
Yeah,
she's from the Philippines or something, right?
Yeah, she'd crush it. I mean, there's so many.
That style like could work with this too.
Even if you want
to cover your ears, all this, but like, yo, we go.
Man, no, I look at this and I think Jose Garcia. This to me is a Jose Garcia book.
Whoever it is, let's I would love to see it happen. And I think
Jose's busy. Stop.
It's really difficult. We've seen throughout the years how rare it is to catch lightning in a bottle and really resonate with a scene, and then how extra rare it is to take that lightning and turn something legacy out of that's like almost a unicorn at this point. But how many thousand sort of forgettable comics are there that they have to happen before something really good happens? And we're all here, the three of us sitting on this panel with sort of, I think, overlapping interests, but obviously some different interests. Matt's more into the manga stuff, and we're all giving it like an 8, maybe a 9, whatever.
Here's something crazy. Let me tell you this part I didn't say about my review. I had brought this book to work. I work at Galloping Ghost Arcade. I brought it to the pinball location where I was working at for 2 days while I was reading it, kind of just taking in the artwork. And I read comic books at work all the time, but more so than any other comic book I've been reading at work, customers were inquiring, "Hey, what's that? What is that? Hey," and then I would say, "This is Ghost of the Badlands. It's by this dude Razorfist or whatever," and show it off. But like, I read giant, oversized Jim Lee books, McFarlane, art books and stuff like that. Crazy stuff. And out of all the stuff I read at work, I didn't. Nothing has had more inquiries than when I was reading Ghost of the Badlands. So that appeal you're talking about is tangible. Like that is.
Yeah, and that doesn't actually surprise me, because I had the exact same experience in France. Because I didn't know about this. I didn't know that European books existed. Really. I mean, I knew Tintin, I knew Asterix, I knew.
No, dude, it is. Oh.
And I was like, what is that? What is that? Because, I've seen Jim Lee before. Jim Lee's great. I've seen all that stuff before. What the hell is this? I didn't know this existed. And it almost seems like it's too much to even accept that it exists out there. So I'm not even surprised that people go like, "Oh, I've never seen anything like that before."
Well, and it's in Barnes and Noble now. You were saying at the beginning, Aldous?
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully this reaches a wider audience for sure. Because I mean, 6,000 is pretty good, but I mean like a wider, like the wider audience. I think it might do well.
Well, yeah, I think that was sort of what they were saying was kind of the hiccup in the whole system is it really without publishers and distribution networks and everything. Doing it hard because I think Razor said, George has just been fulfilling shipments for even Amazon and everything. And, I don't know how it all works, but I can understand why. Yeah, I don't think that's like a long-term feasible solution to getting a book out there to the big mainstream audience.
No, absolutely not. But, going back to what you said, Mike, your experience was in France. My experience was in Germany. And I was living in Stuttgart, and I just randomly walked into a comic shop, and it wasn't even a comic shop; it was a bookstore. And what I thought was a bookstore, it was actually a bande dessinée shop because everything was hardbound. And I walked by the window and just see books. I'm like, oh, I'll check this out. And it was all it was an entire store of bande dessinée. It was amazing. And I found the Wormworld saga.
Mm-hmm.
And bought an issue because it was a huge display. I'm like, well, this is what everybody must be loving, so I'll check this out. And my German at the time was terrible. I learned German through those while I was there. And oh my God, just absolutely amazing. And even the Marvel and DC collections were amazing. But more than that was the thing, and this still blows me away today. I can walk into like any of the 9 LCSs that I hit on an average month. And maybe 1, maybe 2 will have like a collected works of Karl Barks or something, or some good Disney stuff. Over there,
is that you, Michael, that had that Disney one on stream?
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah,
that was amazing.
The Disney stuff in Europe. Oh my God, man, it is off the chain on how awesome it is. And the Karl Barks collections. These are just the collections of the stuff that were done in the States that they translated over. Were amazing. In presentation, the information that they had, like with the actual intro and the outros, talking about what the book was, and these were comics that they just are republishing, and it was beautiful stuff, beautiful presentation, glorious, and better than what even Fantagraphics does. And Fantagraphics does great work. But the news stories were fantastic. And then I come back to the States, and then we go to Disney World. And I can't find anything. Like, all my daughter wants is a graphic novel for, Donald Duck, like the ones that Dad brought back that are in German. She can't even read. She's just flipping through and looking at the pictures, and we can't find anything at Disney. I have to order it through Fantagraphics to get an English translation of a European Bond graphic novel to find anything that she's going to make her happy. And, it was here when we arrived back. And she loved it. But it blew me away, man. It's a different world over there, and that influence,
and those
that passion is seen in this book.
I can't tell you how many books we've gotten directly from creators, writers, and artists, and you get a personal note, and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy that my book is going over to Australia," and they'll do a remark, they'll put in all this other stuff just because they're and these are big time published books for kids. So yeah, it's a whole nother attitude over there in France. I wish was a bit more prevalent out there.
I don't have my sights on France. I got them set on south of the border. Jose's translating Tiger Blue in the Spanish and getting it in.
Hell yeah, man!
In the shops and stuff down there, gas stations and conventions.
Did we get translations of Ghost of the Badlands already? I thought he already got it into a different language.
I thought he was doing French, but I don't know that for sure. I thought I heard something like that. I don't have time to watch everybody's streams like I used to. But.
Cool. Well, it sounds like we hit everybody's final thoughts. Did anyone have anything else to say? I guess not. You guys better get ready because I have some awful music to close us out on.
Oh, sweet mother of God.
Yes. Enjoy. Till next time, everybody. Bye.
Later.